Hello, hello. My name is Rachel. Welcome to Granny Ray's Productions. We are going to look at various issues, especially local issues. We're in Central California, mainly series, and we're going to look at things that affect us, things we'll vote on, and things that will pretty much affect us. So today I'm going to look at Prop 50. And it's explained in language other than some slime balls trying to write, because let's face it, seems like it's deliberately confusing. And I'm going to try to make it more exciting than watching paint dry because, well, this stuff can be kind of boring. So let's enjoy. I'm going to give you a quick summary, just in a nutshell. Everybody should have gotten this in the mail, but Prop 50, what is it? It authorizes temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting legislative constitutional amendment. So that's your summary of it. And this was put on the ballot by the legislature. So sometimes you might have people who go around, do petitions and say, hey, sign this so we can get it on the ballot. And sometimes the legislature does it. Anybody can put anything on a ballot with enough support. So continuing with the summary, requires temporary use of new congressional district maps through 2030. The districts are independent citizens redistrict commission to resume enacting the congressional district maps in 2031. So basically what that's saying is we have commission lines right now, but the legislator wants to make them theirs until 2030 and then go back to the commission. It establishes policy supporting nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. So they're trying to tell other states, hey, do this as well. The fiscal impact is a one-time cost to counties of up to a few $1 million statewide to update election materials. So basically some ballots have to be changed. It's going to cost money. So here's what the vote means. If you vote yes, you are saying the state would use new legislatively drawn congressional district maps. So in other words, the legislature's districts, not the commission's districts. And that would start in 2026, and California's new maps would be used until the California Citizens Redistricting Commission draws new maps following the 2030 U.S. Census, because that's when they usually do new maps, is in after a census, which that is the 0 year. A no vote on this measure, that is current congressional district maps drawn by the California Citizens Redistrict Commission or the commission, would continue to be used. So there would be no changes. And that would be until 2030 U.S. Census. All right. Now, let's get into the arguments. Proposition 50, or as they call it, the Election Rigging Response Act, approves temporary emergency congressional district maps to counter Donald Trump's scheme to rig next year's congressional election, and reaffirms California's commitment to independent, nonpartisan redistricting after the next census. Vote yes on 50 for democracy in all 50 states. Prop 50 was written by politicians for politicians. This is the nutshell again, sorry. And dismantling safeguards that keep elections fair, removes requirements to keep local communities together, and eliminates voter protections that ban maps designed to favor political parties. Vote no to protect fair elections and keep citizens, not politicians, in charge of redistricting. All right, so let's look at the text, or as we put here, the meat and potatoes of the law. So, Proposition 50. This amendment proposed by the Assembly Constitutional Amendment 8 of the 2025-26 regular session. So basically they're saying the legislators voted on this. Expressly amends the California Constitution by adding a section thereto, therefore new provisions proposed to be added are printed in italic type to indicate they are new. All right. So they're basically putting an amendment into the Constitution of California, and in this one, it's Article 21. First, this measure, so here it is. This measure shall be known and may be cited as the Election Rigging Response Act. So here's the second proposed amendment. So second, the people of California, the state of California, find and declare the following. A, President Donald Trump has called on Republicans. That was copied and pasted. I double checked. That's their word, not mine. It's not in the dictionary. You'd think they would have edited better. Oh well. States to undertake an unprecedented mid-decade redistricting of congressional seats to rig the 2026 United States midterm elections before voting begins. Second part, Part B. The state of Texas has convened a special session. Wow, that does not go off the tongue easily. Of its legislators to redraw congressional district maps to unfairly advantage Republicans. C, the legislature of the state of Florida has established a select committee to advance an extraordinary mid-decade redistricting to unfairly advantage Republicans. And it's extraordinary. D, Republicans have urged the state of Ohio to conduct its mid-decade redistricting to unfairly produce more Republican seats in Congress. E, Republican officials in the states of Indiana, Missouri, New Hampshire, Nebraska, and South Carolina are also considering President Trump's call for the mid-decade redistricting of congressional seats to unfairly advantage Republicans. F. President Trump and Republicans are attempting to gain enough seats through redistricting to rig the outcome of the 2026 United States midterm elections, regardless of how the people vote. G. President Trump's election rigging scheme is an emergency for our democracy. H. The 2026 United States midterm elections are voters' only chance to provide an essential check and balance against President Trump's dangerous agenda. And now we're to I, the ninth one, and we finally see California. California has long stood as a national leader for fair, independent, nonpartisan redistricting. J. California calls on all other states. I will put that in the comments on J. K. California has a duty to defend democracy. L. The 2026 United States midterm elections for Congress must be conducted on a level playing field without extreme and unfair advantage for Republicans. I guess they can have an extreme and unfair advantage for everyone else. M. The people of California, not politicians, should have the power to approve temporary congressional district maps in response to President Trump's election rigging scheme. N. It is the intent of the people that California's temporary maps be designed to neutralize the partisan gerrymandering being threatened by Republican-led states without eroding representation for all communities. That was the second amendment, or the second part. Now we're to the third part. And this is where the Monty Python comes out. I'm going to grab me a drink of water. We're going to need it. All right. Third, that Section 4 is added to Article 21 thereof to read. Section 4A. It is the policy of the state of California to support the use of fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. The people of the state of California call on the Congress of the United States to pass federal legislation and propose an amendment of the United States Constitution to require the use of fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. So, this is just saying they want the entire nation to make, they want Congress to make a law with this election stuff, saying they want the use of the fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting commissions, kind of like California has right now, and they're trying to get rid of right now, but only temporarily. Section 4B. In response to the congressional redistricting in Texas, the 2025, and notwithstanding any other provision of this Constitution or existing law, the single-member districts for Congress reflected in Assembly Bill 604 of the 25-26 regular session, pursuant to the requirements of Chapter 5 of Division 21 of the Election Code, shall temporarily be used for every congressional election for a term of office commencing on or after the date of this subdivision becomes operative and before the certification of the new congressional boundary lines drawn by the Citizens Redistricting Commission pursuant to subdivision B. Okay, so basically they're saying that Assembly Bill 604, Chapter 5, Division 21. So they're just saying where you could find it if you went to go look it up yourself. And that is of the election code. Shall temporarily be used. So they're saying, and then in the thing they said until 2030, but they do not specify that here. I will tell you that concerns me, because how do we know we're going to get that power back? All right. So, Section 4C1, the Attorney General has the sole legal standing to defend any action regarding a congressional district map adopted pursuant to subdivision B. So basically, pretty straightforward. And then Section 4C, Part 2, the California Supreme Court has original and exclusive jurisdiction in all proceedings in which a congressional district map is adopted pursuant to subdivision B is challenged. So, if somebody's going to sue them, if it wins, they're going to take it to the California Supreme Court. And then part D, the Citizens Redistricting Commission, established pursuant to Section 1, shall continue to adjust the boundary lines of the congressional, state senatorial, assembly, and Board of Equalization districts in conformance with the standards and process set forth in Section 2 in 2031 and every 10 years thereafter as provided in Section 1. And so it's just saying I guess it looks like they'll continue doing everything after 2031 and every 10 years, because that's when redistricting is normally done. All right, and then the fourth part. So we had part 1, which was real simple, the name. Part 2, which had 14 parts to it. And now we have, then part 3 was some of the things. Now we're going to look at some actual languages. So the provisions of this measure are severable. If any portion, section, subdivision, paragraph, clause, sentence, phrase, word, or application of this measure is for any reason held to be invalid by a decision of any court of competent jurisdiction. All right, so basically they're saying that something, I guess, could be severable if any portion of it, the paragraph, clause, blah, 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 to be invalid by the court. That decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this measure. So they might say, okay, so this measure passed, but there's this one section it's got to go if a court determines it, but all the rest of it would stick around. The legislature hereby declares that it would have proposed, and the voters hereby declare that it would have adopted this measure, and every portion, section, subdivision, paragraph, clause, sentence, phrase, word, and application not declared invalid or unconstitutional, without regard to whether any portion of this measure or application of this measure would be, I apologize, would be subsequently valid. So basically what it's saying is that, what's not severable, what's not being taken out is going to be kept. So let's get the official summary from what they wrote themselves. So we're getting it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. So here's the official summary. Proposition 50 authorizes temporary changes to congressional district maps in response to Texas's partisan redistricting legislative constitutional amendment. And so that is the official title of this whole thing. Now they call it the Election Rigging Response Act, which, okay. All right, and then this official title and summary was prepared by our Attorney General. So let's go ahead and talk about why it's here. In response to Texas's mid-decade partisan congressional redistricting, this measure temporarily requires new congressional district maps as passed by the legislature in August of 2025 to be used in California's congressional elections through 2030. It retains California's Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission and directs the commission to resume enacting congressional district maps in 2031 after the 2030 census and every 10 years thereafter. So basically, the commission will stay, but they won't get back to work until 2031. Establishes state policy supporting use of fair, independent, and nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. So again, this is what they're wanting to take to the Congress of the United States to get everybody to do that. Again, the irony. Summary of the legislative analysis, estimate of net state and local government fiscal impact. So what do we pay? So there's a one-time cost to counties of up to a few $1 million statewide. The county cost, again, as I mentioned before, is to upgrade the election materials or the ballots to reflect the new congressional maps, because some people will change. In the legislature, kind of would you like to know how they voted? So in the Senate, I can talk, not very well, but I can. In the Senate, there were 30 ayes and 8 noes. And in the Assembly, there are 57 ayes and 20 noes. And I am thinking about 87. No, keep it for later. Let us move on. Now some background. The U.S. Congress is part of the federal government that makes laws. So we're basically doing a civics lesson here. But it has the Senate, it has the House, and all 50 states have 2 senators, and that gives them 100 senators total, and then the House has 435, and that districts are done by population. And each member of the House represents a certain number. I think it's in the 600,000s. That's why you see a bunch of little tiny districts in Southern California and the Bay Area, and everyone else is huge. Currently, California has 52 congressional districts, and voters who live in each district elect 1 member every 2 years to represent them. All right. So, more background. The U.S. Census counts population every 10 years. So if there's a 0 at the end of the year, they're doing a census. Our last census was in 2020. Our next one will be in 2030. And the number of people living in an area goes up and down. So every 10 years, the U.S. Census counts the number of people who live in the U.S. And that will determine how many or where the lines for that representative will be. So let's talk about congressional redistricting. So each state draws congressional district maps following the U.S. Census. So every 10 years after the census is completed, the states draw new congressional lines. So let's say a lot of people moved into the Valley and a lot of people moved out of the Bay Area. Well, the Bay Area might have a little larger district and ours might be a little bit smaller because we have more people. Or let's say more people moved out of the Valley. Our district might be a little larger now because we have to have the same number of people. This process is called redistricting, and each state decides what process to use to draw new district maps. So when drawing new maps of each state, they must follow some federal laws. For example, each congressional district in the state must represent about the same number of people. So they can't have a district that represents one community and then another one that represents a whole bunch of other communities. All right. So states typically do not redistrict sooner than every 10 years. And states typically only draw congressional district maps about every 10 years unless there is a court order. And those are changes to comply with the law. And so they're saying in August of 2025, the Texas legislature passed a bill to adopt new maps for the 2026 elections without the court order. And several other states are considering doing that as well before the 2026 elections. Congressional redistricting in California. Okay, so state legislatures draw congressional maps in most states, but some states use a commission to do the job. And before 2010, the California legislature drew the state's congressional maps. In 2010, California voters gave this job to the independent commission known as California's Redistricting Commission. So California voters said, we don't want legislature, we want the commission. And the commission includes 14 members. There's 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and then 14 or 4 members. They might be independents, it might be libertarians, it might be Greens, it might be social democrats, but they're not going to be one of the 2 major parties. So it's kind of even. And it's the commission's job to draw the new congressional district maps, and it must follow the federal and state laws. So, for example, state laws require, among other things, that the commission avoid splitting up neighborhoods, local communities of interest. State law also prohibits the commission from considering political parties or who's running for office when they draw those maps. Current California congressional districts. The commission drew the current maps for California's 52 congressional districts. These maps were based on the 2020 U.S. Census and have been used since the 2022 congressional elections. Okay, I am going to take a couple moments break. I will be back in about 2 minutes. Okay. That was a very fast 2 minutes. All right. Just had to grab something. All right. Oh, I went the wrong way. Okay. So, use legislatively drawn congressional district maps until after the next census. Proposition 50 replaces California's current congressional district maps with new legislatively drawn maps. So they're going to reject the commissions and go with the legislature. The total number of districts would not change. Proposition 50's maps must follow federal law, but they are not required to follow the state requirements placed on the commission. So that's the neighborhoods, interest, that what we talked about earlier. The state would use Proposition 50's maps for congressional elections starting in 2026. The state would use these maps until the commission drew new district maps following the 2030 U.S. Census. And I did it again. I apologize. All right, so national congressional redistricting. Call for a change in federal law. Proposition 50 asks the U.S. Congress to change federal law and propose an amendment that could be done by fair, independent, and redistricting commissions nationwide. While Proposition 50 expresses voter support for this idea, but does not change federal law or require any particular action of Congress or the California legislature, because why would it? Minor one-time cost to county and state election officials. Counties run elections, and the states oversee them. But most congressional districts in California would change at least some under the new maps. County and state election officials would need to update election materials. This would result in one-time cost to counties of up to a few $1,000,000 statewide, and the one-time cost of the roughly 200 that is going to be about 200,000 to the counties. The state amount is much less than 1/10 of 1% of the state's roughly $220 billion general fund budget. And the general fund is the account the state uses to pay for most public services, including education, health care, and prisons. So, cheers to that one. All right, so let's look. I have a side-by-side. We can look at the maps. And we would see what changes. All right, so some of the biggest changes you'll see in Northern California, you'll see that all of the, so this right here is what we have currently. This is what they're wanting to change it to. And so this will dip down south. So we see this. If you look in our area, we don't have hardly any change. And then there's some changes in Southern California. And we'll have another look at this map shortly. We'll look at that one later too. So let's look at arguments for and against Prop 50. And I just got this right out of our voters ballot. It's wonderful. They say, arguments printed on this page are opinions of the authors and not been checked for accuracy by any official agency. I'm going to take a moment here and we're going to get ready to go over this one. All right, argument in favor of Proposition 50. Stop! And I'm gonna speak in capital letters too. This will be fun. These arguments are fun. All right, stop Trump from rigging the 2026 election. Donald Trump and Texas Republicans are making an unprecedented power grab to steal congressional seats and rig the 2026 election before voting even begins. Other Republican states are following suit. They want to steal enough seats to control Congress, even if voters overwhelmingly reject their agenda. This isn't politics as usual. It's an emergency for our democracy. Ensure fair representation in Congress. We have already seen how Trump has recklessly imposed tariffs and hurt California families, denied disaster assistance to fire victims, and ordered mass arrests without warrants. The 2026 election for Congress represents our only chance to provide an essential check and balance on Trump's dangerous agenda. I don't see what this has to do with congressional districting lines, but okay. Okay. If Californians don't act now, Donald Trump will seize total power for 2 more years. Proposition 50, the Election Rigging Response Act will, oh no, I did that again. I apologize, as I put our democracy in danger. Levels the playing field. Prop 50 makes sure the 2026 midterm elections are conducted on a level playing field without an unfair advantage to Republicans, because, you know, nothing says a Republican state like California. commits to fair redistricting. Prop 50 reaffirms California's commitment to independent redistricting and calls for a nationwide commitment to fair and impartial maps. Gives voters the power. Prop 50 puts the power in the hands of the people of California, not backroom politicians, to approve emergency congressional district maps in response to Trump's election rigging scheme. We should have done a Trump counter. My goodness. Trump is under their skin. Is fair and proportional. Prop 50 provides emergency maps only because Republicans moved forward with their power grab. Is temporary. And that's one I'll believe it when I see it. These maps expire in 2030. Prop 50 preserves California's award-winning redistricting reforms and reaffirms the California Citizens Redistricting Commission's authority to draw congressional districts after the next census. Talk about a run-on sentence. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Republicans rig the election and steal control of Congress next year, they'll continue to eliminate health care for millions of Americans, slash funding for schools, and cut essential services for veterans to pay for tax breaks for billionaires and corporations, just like the Democrats do. Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to. Protect democracy in all 50 states like you have the power to. Calm down. California has a duty to defend democracy. To do that, we can't unilaterally disarm or fight with both hands tied behind our backs. Well, you get a good martial artist. When Trump tries to rig elections, we must fight back with every tool available. Prop 50 draws fair maps that represent California's diverse communities and ensure our voices aren't silenced by partisan gerrymandering in other states. California leads the nation in protecting voting rights and fair elections. I'll try to say it with a straight face. Forgive me if I can't. California leads the nation in protecting voter rights and fair elections. When other states try to silence our voices and rig the system, we must respond decisively. All right, let's look at this one. Join the worst president of my lifetime, a corrupt governor who's out for him and his buddies. I'm not up on Alex Padilla. Guy who was in the arms, I believe it was armed services. He knew Russiagate was a hoax and lied. The woman who is more interested in her stock prices than she is her constituents. And then all these people, election experts, independent redistricting commissioners, but we don't have their names written down, Planned Parenthood for some reason, the NAACP, California veterans. I guess if they have two of them, they could say that. I don't know. Again. Teachers. I bet some of them oppose them too. And nurses. Because, teachers and nurses are all about the congressional redistricting. All right. Now, here is their So when they do the argument for, the people who are against it get to do a rebuttal. So here is the rebuttal to the argument you just heard. The wrong path. No on Prop 50. We know American democracy is on fire, but accelerating gerrymandering only adds to the fuel. That was so cheesy. Politicians are seizing this crisis to justify a power grab. That was not well written. Prop 50 does not defend our democracy. Prop 50 is not a magic pill. No, it's a proposition to cure the nation's ills. It claims to protect democracy, yet diminishes our communities' voices and is ineffective against any overreach of presidential power. Vote no! California gerrymandering allowed the legislature to draw partisan seats without transparency or citizen input, solely to protect incumbents. By 2001, the government was gridlocked with legislators held hostage to the extremes of their party. Prop 50 does not defend our democracy! I felt that was the best way to put that. Prop 50 is not a magic pill to cure the nation's ills. Again, it's a proposition. Voters rose up and handed line drawing over to citizens, resulting in competitive districts. Previously safe seats must now be earned. Better representation. Women in the legislature doubled. Asian representation tripled. Black representation nearly doubled. And Latino seats grew by 8% because, genitals and melanin are the most important things to remember and worry about when you are voting. Districts do not belong to either party. They belong to the people. But party bosses want to call the shots again. No to a pay-to-play system. Prop 50 says this is temporary. Yet the legislature will bypass the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission again in 2028, 2030, and perhaps beyond. Don't be fooled. I had to put that in. Don't be fooled. All right. Legislatures drew this map behind closed doors for you to rubber stamp. It is not your choice. Vote no on partisan gerrymandering. Vote no on Prop 50. And the writers of that were Cynthia Dye, one of the commission peoples, Jean Rea, one of the commission peoples, and Jody Filkins Weber, one of the commission peoples. I'm just saying. Now, here is the argument against, and then we'll have the people who are for its rebuttal at the end. Argument against Proposition 50. Proposition 50, a power grab by politicians. Prop 50 was written by politicians for politicians. Prop 50 dismantles constitutional safeguards that keep election maps fair. It removes requirements to keep cities, counties, and local communities together and eliminates voter protections that ban maps designed to favor incumbents or political parties. Putting politicians back in charge of drawing their own districts or those of their friends A no vote protects fair elections and keeps the people of California, not politicians, in charge of redistricting. There were a lot of P's in there, I'm telling you. No on Prop 50. It repeals landmark voter-approved election reforms. For decades, Sacramento politicians drew on their own district boundaries behind closed doors with no public oversight, guaranteeing their re-election, denying a real choice, and shutting out many women and people of color from elected office. In 2008, California voters approved historic election reform, creating the Independent California Citizens Redistricting Commission. Voters decided district lines should be drawn by a balanced panel of everyday citizens, not by politicians who stood to benefit. Prop 50 throws out citizen-drawn congressional maps created through a transparent public process, with input from over 35,000 Californians. Instead, politicians secretly drew maps, leaving voters with no real say. No on Prop 50, another scheme to permanently end independent redistricting. In 2008 and 2010, the Democratic Party and special interests spent millions of dollars to stop citizen redistricting. Later, the California Republican Party even sued to overturn citizen-drawn maps. And lost! I couldn't help it. Now Sacramento politicians are scheming again to regain control with Prop 50. Make no mistake! Prop 50 is not temporary. For over half a decade, politicians get to impose their gerrymandered maps. Worse, it sets a dangerous precedent, opening the door for Sacramento to keep drawing election maps beyond 2031, giving politicians permanent power to shield themselves and their allies from accountability for California's high cost of living, skyrocketing housing costs, and rising energy bills. No on Prop 50. Don't be misled by political spin. The same politicians who opposed independent redistricting from the start now claim Prop 50 will save democracy. Save democracy. In truth, Prop 50 weakens fair representation by shutting the public out and bringing gerrymandering back to California. Prop 50 is not democratic. It gives voters a take it or leave it decision on the most partisan maps in California's history, a product of politicians' secretive backroom deals with zero meaningful public engagement. I'm going to take a small sip here. Prop 50 divides communities to benefit politicians, splitting counties 114 times and cities 141 times, far more than the citizen-drawn maps. When politicians gerrymander, they divide our neighborhoods and weaken the voice of communities of color. Whatever happens in Texas, we cannot save democracy by destroying it in California. Vote no on Prop 50. And that's the Reverend Max Shorty, civil rights leader, no. And then no on Prop 50, a massive waste of taxpayer money. The legislature has called a special election just to pass this politician-protecting constitutional change, costing the taxpayers $200 million. Again, I've not seen any evidence of that. I'm just reading what they're saying. But that's a lot of money. With a massive budget deficit, Sacramento politicians are making painful cuts to healthcare, housing, education, and public safety instead of protecting important programs. They're spending it on a political power grab. And this was written by Roberto Moncada, and he's a member of the United Latinos Action Faith. Bautista Tarashimo, president of National Diversity Coalition, and Taylor Shorty from Community Repower Movement. Now, here is the rebuttal. And by the way, I cannot believe they didn't mention Trump, not even once. Come on. Trump. We need our Trump fix. Okay, let's move on because we're about to get it. All right. Here's a rebuttal. Warning! No on 50 backed by Trump extremists. First sentence, we got our Trump. Who's spending millions against Prop 50? Now, this next sentence is so badly written. It is so badly written. Okay. It is the worst sentence ever. Okay. I don't do impersonations, sorry. Okay. An anti-choice mega millionaire. Now, first of all, there needs to be a comma between choice and mega. And second, are we talking the anti-abortion or anti-abortion or something else? I mean, anti-choice kind of means something else. Or as Indigo Montoya would say, I don't think you think what it thinks it means. What does anti-choice mean? And again, don't forget your comma. Because, fun fact, one of the people writing this rebuttal is a teacher. An anti-choice mega millionaire named Charles Munger Jr., who wants to help Donald Trump and red state Republicans rig the 2026 elections and hand Trump unchecked power for 2 more years. Independent redistricting commissioners, election experts, and leading civil rights organizations from the NAACP to the National Democratic Redistricting Committee urge you to reject the lies spread by No on 50's phony front groups. Hey, that's good alliteration. I like that. You made up for the lack of a comma, but you did not make up for the lack of your bad word choices. Lie number 1. Prop 50 repeals landmark voter-approved election reforms. This is plainly false. Prop 50 calls on all states to end partisan gerrymandering and reaffirms the power of California's Citizens Redistricting Commission to draw the lines, but after the next census. Lie number 2. Prop 50 removes requirements to keep cities, counties, and local communities together. Prop 50 does the opposite, keeping more cities and counties combined and communities together than California's existing maps. Lie number 3. Prop 50 puts politicians back in charge of drawing their own districts. Untrue! Prop 50 puts power to approve emergency maps in the hands of voters, not politicians. What? The whole thing is the legislative made maps. Maybe it's they're lying. I get it now. Line number 4. Prop 50 permanently ends independent districting. Also untrue. It doesn't say that, but it could. Prop 50 is a temporary and proportional response to Trump's election rigging scheme and expires in 2030. Californians cannot allow Donald Trump and Texas Republicans to rig the 2026 election and silence our voices. Vote yes on Prop 50, protect our democracy, preserve nonpartisan redistricting, and ensure a fair election in all 50 states. And again, so we finally got our first commissioner who has said, yeah, I'm for giving up my power. That's Sarah Sadwani. And then we have Jody Hicks of Planned Parenthood for some reason. And then Nikki Davis Malveski, president of Sacramento City Teachers Association. Why don't you have a union? Get a real union. An association is a joke. All right. And know how to put your commas in. God bless America. Embarrassing. Okay, now if you haven't figured out by now, by my tone, how will I personally vote? Well, no. Oh, Craig Center is right. Sorry about that. No. Voting no. Why? Well, first of all, the Constitution says that our government is for the people, by the people. And I meant to put 2010, not 2020. The people, the citizens of California voted to say they wanted an independent commission of citizens, not the legislator to draw our districts. And that was in 2010. I apologize. It was voted in 2008 and started in 2010. Now, since 2020, California has become more red. And I'm going to show you something here in a minute that really tells me why I think they're putting this bill out here. But this bill feels to me, now just to me, I am not speaking for anyone else. I cannot tell you what exactly they are thinking because I can only speculate. But to me, it feels like the Democrats are desperate to hold on to power. And so they're going to take it away from the people because the people are taking it away from them. And this tells me, as a citizen, that my voice is less important than a political party's voice. And that's not okay with me. But I think this is why they're doing this. You can see it's becoming a lot more red now. And they are losing. They're losing the fight. And they don't want to lose the fight. They want to get all these coastal people to cancel out the more inland people. Because as we in the valley know, we're a purple state. We're not a blue state. There's a lot of us, well, not us, but there's a lot of red voters there. So I think this is why they're losing. They know it, and they're trying to stem the tide, if you will. Now, I'm going to end it with a long-term solution that has really nothing to do with Prop 50. But this is, to me, the proper solution if we are really, truly being honest. And we can only hope something like this happens. I don't think it'll happen within my lifetime, but it would be nice. And we need to get rid of something. We need to get rid of, okay, here's a controversial statement. We need to get rid of the Constitution. It needs to go. Why? Our Constitution's ancient. There's only a handful of countries that have Constitution older than ours. It's 237 years old. And it was written by only men. So if that genital thing is really super important to you, which it should be in this case, and of course, they were only white men, many of them slaveholders, landowners, rich, and they didn't know anything about electricity, air conditioning, cars and paved roads, radios, typewriters, television, computer, internet, toilets, sinks, fans. And they did their poopies in chamber pots. And we're following their rules. Let's face it, this is a totally different world. And it does not fit today's needs at all. We have the technology to be far better, far less corrupt. And how would we do that? Well, in a new constitution, we can eliminate Congress and all the corrupted electeds. We don't need them. We need some people to manage, and that's about it. So no more corrupt politicians who care more about their parties and their monetary benefits, like stock prices, Nancy Pelosi, and their corrupt donors and their donations, bribes, donations. The people would have a direct voice, and that could ensure that the interests of the people, not the elites, would be taken care of. The people would be able to set taxes and have a direct say in how those taxes are spent. And I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of people saying, yes, I want to spend all of my money on weapons, especially those that take $1 million for one round. Yeah, I want that. Give me that. Raise my taxes, raise my prices. That's what I want. Nobody's going to do that. They're going to ask for health care. And if they can vote for it, they'll get it. The people would be able to say the laws they want to have on the books. Do we want this gun control law here? You know, there's a national registry, and like 80-90% of the people are for it. But there's special interests that keep that from happening. Having a direct democracy, which we now have the technology for, could put a stop to that. So what people could do is go on a site to petition. You get enough signatures. There's a ballot out there. You could have channels that have debates on it. But we need to have an active citizenry. I think it was Benjamin Franklin says, yes, we've got a new constitution. Now it's up to the people to keep it alive, and we're not doing a very good job. No offense. I'm not trying to hurt your feels, but honest. And then it's truly equal, and the amount of money would not make one more or less powerful, because we would get the same number of votes as a CEO or a board member of a big corporation, because everybody would get one vote. Now, there might be advertisements, but we could possibly do, not limit it, but we could get everybody talking, because the key to fighting, incorrect and bad speech is to listen and then state why that person is wrong in a kind and respectful way. That is how you get change done, not by name calling or anything like that, and certainly not by censoring. So anybody who wants to talk should talk. But moving on, and how do we do this? Well, we have this incredible internet. It's amazing. And again, this is not going to happen overnight. And but we could use a social security number to register the voting and have some, you know, things, maybe you know, I know there's some very clean elections. I don't see why in the future this is not possible now, I don't think, but use our social security number to register our site and then vote from our computer, our phones, our tablets, or whatever. And then having that only allows a citizen to vote, and then the ballots wouldn't get lost because they're going directly to a central system and it uses blockchain. And, we would want to make sure it's secure. And the ballot counting machines are notoriously easy to hack. And this would cut down on hacking, but it would have to be, like I said, blockchain. It would have to be secure, firewalls to the extreme. And I'd like just to remind you, as I said, those voting machines are so easy to hack. There's video upon video of them counting them wrong. But it's not the machines. The machines are done what they're programmed to do, because a lot of the machines are used for homeowners associations. And so one family might have more land than another. And so that family who has more land is going to have more vote. Their vote's going to count a little more. So maybe it's based on land. So it is a feature of those machines. And one of the more popular hacks is to say, count this vote for this candidate as 2 votes and count this candidate as a half a vote. That is very easily doable and has been done. So, and then they had in Las Vegas, they had the hacking convention, and kids were sent to hack the State Department for the kids hacking contest. So there needs to be a lot of improvement. That's why I'm saying we're not ready. But once we get some good blockchain and some good firewalls and good everything in there, there's no reason we couldn't. And yes, there are drawbacks. It's going to take a long time to make a site like that come to life. And again, security has to be there. If there's a possibility to hack, then it's going to go on to the meantime. And we make sure we have paper ballots that are traceable. And there has to be a secure chain of custody. Blockchain machines. We want to get away from those easily hackable and try to get to some better machines. We need to demand clear exit polls. We've not seen a lot of that because, if there's a big discrepancy between election polls and the results, then that needs to be investigated. And those problems need to be taken very seriously. And what you can do right now is vote no on 50. Vote no on 50. Thank you so much for watching. If you can, like and subscribe. I'm brand new at this. It would help me out so much, and it would put a huge smile on my face. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.